Afternoon everyone. Today I removed the timing case off WAGG1 and finally find out what camshaft's actually in this, so I can stop playing the guessing game and actually, order the correct parts for it so I can actually drive it again, so it stops sounding like a power stroke diesel. I've already removed the thermo fans, so first thing I'm going to do first is remove the lower radiator hose. What is, I'll grab the screwdriver from up here. Crack this bottom radiator hose loose, which wasn't very tight to start with. The goal is not to drop the entire contents on the floor, which is why I've got a container underneath. And I'm hoping I don't drop it all on the floor. I really don't want to, but that's probably going to be the case. Stop playing difficult. Money shot. Well, I would agree that I actually got 99.9% of it in the bucket. Well, not the bucket, the container. Let that drain for a bit, and then we'll come back and we'll remove the transcooler lines and pull the radiator out, and then pull the rest of this off. I've got to disconnect transcooler lines so I can pull the radiator out, because it's already got no AC condenser in already, so I should be able to pull the radiator out. I obviously have to pull the bumper off so I can slide the camshaft out through the front, and hopefully it tells me some numbers that I can go on Google with, or some sort of brand name, so I can contact whoever made it and ask them what would be the supporting mods for that camshaft. So as I said before, I'm tired of playing the guessing game. It's not fun. Now, we'll pull this top rad hose off. Give that a bit of a squeeze, whatever water's left over in the rad hose should come out. Pull this top rad hose off. I should really add music in for those times where I'm just doing things that seem really boring for you. They got some tunes, but you need to find something that's not copyright material. In the bucket, not on the floor. Or the container. I keep calling it a bucket, but it's a 20-litre container. Those are off enough. Funny is, these hoses are so tight on already, and I've grab a 16 and a 19 for the transcooler lines. This is a VT, but the remnants of a transcooler is in there, but it's in two pieces for whatever reason. Like I said, I'm picking off the last previous owner's project, which would include butchery at its finest. Let those transcooler lines drain for a little bit, and then pull the radiator out, because I'm trying not to completely stain the floor, even though it's already stained. I'd rather not stain it some more, even though I do plan to give this floor a coating, seal up any cracks that's in it. I don't think there's any cracks in it. Anyway, let that drain a bit some more. Probably start removing the world's longest intake tube. This was just for a gag. It doesn't do anything, as everyone knows. a pod filter on a Commodore that's not in an actual cold air box is pretty much what we call hot air intake or dirt intake or the submerged water intake. And my hair's stuck. Where'd that go? Oh, convenient, it landed on top. Power steering boot. I thought putting my hair up it wouldn't get in the way, but clearly it wants to. Pull that off. Pull this off. Now that's out of the way. Alright there. And then, did I do this up? No, I didn't. Pull the lonely throttle cable off because this is a 12-pack Commodore with no electrics, no cruise control, no traction control, even though why would you need it? And yeah, it's just one cable. Get that off, that out of the way. That down there. I'm going to try not to disconnect wiring, but I'm just going to have to because I'd rather it just out of the way while I do this, while this still drains. I know there's more in there, you're just lying. Try and pull this up. Whatever water's left in it. Check, mate. This radiator has copped so much abuse, it's not even funny. I legit, when I pulled the engine out of this last time, I had the sump literally bashing into it and there's a kink in it. I'll show you in a minute. Yeah, so while we're waiting for that to finish dripping, this is what I was talking about before. This radiator has absolutely copped it. That right there is where the sump crashed into the actual radiator. I am surprised it doesn't leak still. I will be getting a bigger radio for it because I don't plan to run this car with air conditioning. So I have all this room. And that's the transcooler I spoke about. That's how I found it. The fitting snapped off. For whatever reason. I don't know. Like I said, there's so much room in here to put a bigger radiator in. You may not be able to find one that will fit in the standard brackets that hold it in, but you can just cut those off and make your own, which is what I plan to do. I want to put a decent size radiator in here because this engine tends to get warm. That's if, regardless if I get a new engine or not, this is still getting a bigger radiator. Because the Achilles heel to a fucking Commodore is that they don't run cool at all, which is half the reason why either they blow up or mad tip-in starve the oil pump and then the bearings get unhappy and then shit explodes. Plugging it in, but I guess it's not good to have wires hanging all over the place, I would assume. Push this wire back through there. I'm really waiting for like a snag point where I go, oh, I missed that wire. What was that connected to? It's usually how it works. We've all made it through one of these. Miracle. Right, get a 7mm, undo that plug for the DFI. Pretty sure it's a 7mm last time I checked. Last time I checked it was. Yeah. I don't have to remove everything, just enough that I can get this off. You can remove the intake, like the whole thing, with wiring attached like not completely removing it from the block, but it's just easier. And this loom, the engine loom on this is a WH loom, which is why you've seen in the past there's a random wire going to the fuel pump relay, because somewhere down the line they've changed something. Not exactly what they've changed, but trigger wire for the fuel pump relay, which would mean that the starter relay is not working properly or it's wired differently. Either way, that's a future me problem. As long as I can turn the fuel pump on and start it from the key, I don't care. Alright, now that's somewhat out of the way. We'll undo the bolts for the power steering pump. If you don't have a rattle gun or nothing to fit in there, my advice would be leave this belt on, because the physical force of the engine trying to turn over will hold the pump in place so you can actually crack those bolts loose. In the past, I've taken the belt off or cut the belt because I've got to replace it one, and I can't fit an impact in there, so I've had to like jerry the belt back on to hold it on so I can actually get those undone. Alright then, looks like it's still dripping, so I'll wait for that to finish dripping and I'll remove the rest of the bits and pieces and pull the rest of the bolts out. Alright then, let's lightly loosen off these power steering bolts. Probably don't have to take it off, but it's probably better, so it's out of the way. So those are loose, so grab yourself a 15mm breaker bar and remove the belt. Simple as that. Don't leave this on the floor somewhere, hang it up so it doesn't get all deformed, because that'll make your life 20 times harder when you're trying to put it back on. Let's put those bolts off for the power steering pump, and take the bolts off for the bracket. Now I'm pretty sure those are a 12 or a 13, don't quote me, I could be wrong. I'll bring both kids along for this adventure. That's definitely a 13. Loosen off. Now at the moment this thing hasn't been running power steering. This pump is indeed junk already, so the lines are actually disconnected at the moment. So I'm not feeding shit into the power steering rack. It's just, there's nothing going to it because I'm ordering a new pump. Even though I'm pretty sure I have a spare one. Off. Pesky power steering lines, not power steering lines. Now, mind you, if you're changing a power steering pump on an Eco, be aware there are actually technically two different bolts. They are the same socket size, but they are different because one is thicker, one is thinner. And if you're trying to put it back on, it will give you a whole lot of grief. Tempting to. What would be the odds? Because we actually have to remove that one. Take this one off. Most of the pulleys don't have to come off, it's just Yeah, this one will have to come off. It's just easier to get to things. You'll notice that I'll have a habit of walking back to the toolbox because I like to keep, even though I may end up pulling it back out again, I do like to basically put it all back, because in the past I've had a tendency to start losing things. Suspicious feeling, pretty sure the DFI, sorry, the coil pack bolts underneath are 13. That one, oddly coloured fucking spark plug wires and different length ones because I don't have the right sizes. Chuck those over there somewhere. Alright, ratchet back. Pull the coil off. So we'll probably we'll have to remove that transcooler as well, just because it will prohibit my ability to remove said camshaft from it. Right, put that up here somewhere. Alrighty then. The next step will be to remove those two lines there. Pull the alternator off, pull the tensioner off. I'll remove some of these bolts out. I have seal some of these bolts in, but you want to try and get as much water out of the block as possible, because when you remove this actually is a cooling channel at the bottom of the intake manifold. I don't think it's the case on every single car, don't quote me on it. But even though this engine might be running for a bit, you don't want water going in it. You don't want water sitting in it. So when you do that, just make sure that all the water is drained out of it and let it sit for a bit. Because you don't want water dropping down into your engine, regardless if you keep it or not. Just don't do it. Alrighty then, get the spanners out for that one. 16, 17, I think. Can't remember. Get the 16 out. Get the 17. Grab 15. Because old and new is very different, odd sizes on the front of these things. The first one will probably be 17 mil. So just going to remove that one off. Probably have to get a socket on that one. To get the drawer. Alright. Legit bugger all effort on that one. We have to move the bucket over a bit more so I don't drop half the coolant in the ground. I've managed to, pretty sure, capture all of it. I'll put those up there for the time being. Alright, so I'm going to move that underneath the block. A little bit of water. Alright then. So, knowing my luck, pretty sure there's, that's the 16. Got the 16. There's 16 on deep socket. Just remove these. All I'll do is I'll undo this because I want to try and get the water, because this rod's a tad long and I'll probably risk spilling it everywhere. So give that a drain. Bit more water came out of that other rod hose. And I believe it's starting to rain. So might have to stop for a minute and let the rain do its thing. Alrighty then. Now that's draining. We can pull these bolts out for the lower half of the tensioner. Let them sit in there because I've still got to undo. Actually, no, yeah, still got to undo the other one. Grab that 12 mil. Pretty sure it's a 12. Mil for the alternator bracket. Oh, that's 30. I should know that. I've changed enough of them. There are enough alternators in my time. Pretty sure I can please. I think if I could. Okay, first time for everything. See, the handy thing is that the same bolts you use the alternator to remove the alternator bracket, same size, socket size for the ground strap, or I think it's the ground strap or positive terminal on the back of the alternator. That's removed. Insert these bolts back in that so I don't lose them. Put those up there. Grab those two bolts, put them back in the bracket, just so you know where everything goes. Remove that hose clamp from that. I'm fairly certain there's no more water to come out of this. Touch wood. Will I require the big channel locks for this one? No more water, enough. Alright then. Now I have to get ready to pull the balancer off. Hopefully that actually comes off with a bit of ugga-dugga. We'll see what happens, shall we? Alright then, time to do the old-fashioned breaker bar on the crossmember and pray that it cracks it loose. That actually sounds like it cracked it loose, to be honest. Given the fact that that didn't fall off. Yep. We have success on that front. Why is there so much? Looks like gasket maker on the front of this, to be honest. Why? That's going to go in a bit. So I can actually put the tool on and actually remove the balancer. That'll do it for this part, because this video is already getting longer than it needs to. Stay tuned for part 2.